New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Ali.
Hello and welcome to Growing Edge Live. I'm Ali Benjamin, and it is my great joy to be here each and every time. Welcome. I'm so glad that you stumbled across us or found us intentionally. Whatever brought you here today, I'm so glad that you listened, and I'm welcoming you with lots of love and appreciation for you right where you are, wherever you are. And I trust that today's show, the conversation that we have today, inspires you and maybe helps you to move through your day and through your life with greater self-awareness and a greater sense of love and support, because that is my intention. Every show we interview soul-centered individuals that are channeling their time, their love, their energy, their creativity, their resources into doing good works in the world. And so every week we come together to inspire minds and heal hearts and transform lives and evolve consciousness. We are sponsored by Satya Center and produced by the New Thought Media Network. And I underscore that today, the New Thought Media Network, because my guest today is Dr. Robert Brzezinski. And Robert is the founder of the New Thought Media Network Ministry. There he is, for those of you that are watching. And for those that are listening, you can't see, but he's all dressed up and we're ready to dive in to have a conversation. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you, Ali. It's great to see you, great to be with you, and great to be back, because it's been a while since you and I have had a chance to really sit down and gab a bit and share a bit and explore a bit around what's happening in New Thought and the future of New Thought and New Thought in general. So I'm really happy to be here.
Great. Me too. Yeah. I thought in preparation for our conversation today, I better go back and listen to my very first episode of Growing Edge Live, which actually was an introduction. And you were my guest and you helped me kick it off. And I really appreciated hearing our conversation from a year ago and sort of touching base with that new energy, that beginning energy that I had in coming to this platform with all of the beautiful presenters that you have on this network. And so I know that we'll be able to talk about a lot of things because there's a lot up in the world, but I really want to take this opportunity to shine the spotlight on New Thought Media Network and the various different speakers, ministers, teachers, authors, spiritual beings, mystics, and all those diverse individuals and groups, as some of your shows on the network are actually collaborations, more than one person or two people. So
exactly.
So, welcome. Where are you?
I'm actually at home, which at this time of the year is I don't want to say unusual, but conference season throughout the summer and the fall actually keeps New Thought Media Network traveling a bit and on the road and here and there and everywhere. However, I'm at a nice point where I'm at home and I'm working. I've got about a month here, and we'll be heading off to the affiliated New Thought Network and their fall retreat here in just a handful of weeks. That happens in the beginning of October, the 7th through the 11th. So spending some quality time at home. It's that we're now back to school already. So both my kids are back to school, one in college, one in high school. However, the last couple of weeks, we had a lot of time to be together as a family and connect in the ways that we don't get to anymore with both kids getting older. Our eldest is actually an adult, officially, legally, all of that stuff. So, and the other is knocking on the door. So we know that the empty nest season is coming soon, but we're embracing and enjoying and just loving up as much as we can when we're all together as a family.
Yeah, that's so important to recognize that. I know that my children are much older now. I have grandchildren, but I remember those years when they're approaching adulthood and how it can be a very interesting time. And we're almost ready for them to leave. And then, yeah, then there's the empty nest. And so this time is really special when you can get together with both of them and share some family time. So good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'd love to know, or I know, but I'd love to share with our audience, what is New Thought Media Network? And I know that you're the founder. Can you share a little bit about the vision, the mission, the purpose of New Thought Media Network so we can get a clearer understanding of what exactly this is?
Yes. I will absolutely share a bit more of the vision, the mission, the purpose. What exactly this is, that kind of changes from day to day or week to week, depending on what's happening, not only in our world, but in the network. However, the original guiding mission, vision, purpose type statements we shared in the beginning of the program, actually in the intro reel. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment. We inspire humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment, and we are creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. And it's an awful long sentence and statement, and there's a number of my colleagues and others in the world that say, it's got to be short and quick and something you can remember more than something I can remember. However, I think that after 4 or 5 years, 4.5 years now, almost 4.5 years, that I can recite that by rote memory. I know others in my organization, in this organization, can recite that by memory. And I believe that by sharing that at the beginning of every program we do, we're planting that seed in the consciousness of humanity, of those that are exposed to our programming, that's what we're about. We're creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. We just happen to be doing it through the media aspect of life. And what I love about what I get to do is we get to support those that are doing the same thing, but through a different form, through a different experience, that perhaps use some media, but their primary way of expressing all this is a little bit different than what we do here at the network. So all things media, all the time.
Beautiful. So you have a network of individuals that are presenting, that have shows. And I'd love to kind of touch a little bit on the kind of shows that are on this platform. And maybe even if you have any interesting little stories about how you came across people. Like maybe there's some newer people that I'm not aware of yet, or maybe some of your very foundational people that joined the network early on 4.5 years ago. So can you share a little bit about the diversity, the types of shows, and maybe some of the interesting people, personalities that are offering shows and their topics?
Absolutely. Yes. And I don't want to make it sound like it's a revolving door around here because it really isn't. However, there have been some folks that have come on and done a show, and it really struck a chord, and it gave them joy and brought them joy, and they've been with us the whole time. There's others that have come on and done a few months and realized that no, this isn't really my thing, and drift off to do other aspects of the work of sharing new thought. I want to say I love. I'm going to start with your program because I love your program. I do watch it, not always live on Mondays, but I do watch it every week, and I remember that you and I actually bounced around on the far edges of some similar circles for quite a while. I was aware of you for a long time before we actually met each other. And then once we met each other and your beloved Michael, I was just like, oh, these two, they are amazing. And almost immediately I was like, Allie'd be great. I want Allie on the network. Allie would be great. But I've also learned that if I chase people down, if I pursue people and try to convince them that this is a good idea for them and their ministry, it doesn't always work as well. And I know I planted a few seeds and we chatted a couple of times, and then the opportunity came around to really get this program going. And there were a couple of stumbles that I remember in the early episodes, and I actually got to be your producer for a while in that Genesis period. And what I found is everyone on the network brings a unique gift. And so while our shows fall into a few different categories, we have spiritual practices type programming, and we have interview style programming, and we have a little bit more of like a professorial, I didn't say that right, a little bit more of a teaching style, or a little bit more of a variety or comedy style or commentary style. All of the different hosts bring a uniqueness that we don't see an awful lot of overlap. Your show is not like any other show on this network. And the shows I do, New Thought Today on Tuesday afternoons, where we interview new thought leaders, my co-host Reverend Elzia Sekou and I interview new thought leaders and try to look at the vision of the future of where this is all headed, of what needs to happen to get to where this is all calling us. And my Friday morning show is really, we call it Ministers Talking Bleep. And because I try not to say shit on any show other than my own, And on Friday mornings, we talk about politics, or we talk about guns, or we talk about the state of the nation, or the union, or the state of the world, or whatever it is that's in the news, to bring a new thought perspective to that program. And we have programs on grief. Your doula for grief is on Monday afternoons, which I really love. Our dear friend, Dr. Bill Marcioni, and his podcast partner, Carol Lawrence, do a program on Mondays. It's really cool. It follows your show, and it's called the Practical Prayer Podcast. Now, they had a audio only podcast for a long time before getting connected with us. And what they do is they kind of show you the behind the scenes of getting a podcast. So at the beginning of the hour, they are just kind of chit-chatting and figuring out what they want to talk about and where their podcast is going to go. By about 20 minutes after the hour, they kind of do a little break and announce the podcast and then record a podcast. And once they're done, they do another little break where they end the podcast, the audio portion of it, and open it up to the audience for questions or feedback or comments or other interactions. I think that every one of our programs, and it would take me a couple hours to go through all the various people and all the various programs. But there's a lot of variety, from Rockin' the Love with Robin and Gil on Wednesday afternoons. Our dear friend Dr. Sherry has a program on Tuesdays where she focuses, called Global Focus Today, where she looks at the people that are doing focus ministry versus the people that are doing pulpit ministry in New Thought. And we've got a couple of new shows in the works in pre-production. I can talk a little bit about this. Sarah Nichols, Reverend Sarah Nichols, has got a program coming later this fall, actually premiering in just a couple of weeks, where she is very politically active in the world and in New Thought movement. And this isn't necessarily a show about politics as much as it is a show about how New Thought is influencing and can influence not only our political process, but the processes of social action and social activity, and being conscious of what's happening outside of the church circles, as it were. Another relatively new minister, Casey Taylor, is in pre-production, bringing forward a show that's going to look more at pop culture and how pop culture is influenced by New Thought, or could be more influenced by New Thought. All right, I'm going to admit it. I'm over double nickel. I'm over 55. So it's not so easy for me to speak to the 20-somethings. And yet I think, I don't know how old Casey is, so I'm not even going to try to venture a guess, but she's got a voice that can speak to that audience, and that audience will listen to, that wouldn't necessarily listen to how I'm going to say it. And she's got a co-host that she's working with. So much fun. The variety. If you're up on Monday evening, Tuesday evenings, Monday, our producer Michael will have to drop a note in the private chat and let me know the correct day. But our show, Girls Behaving Metaphysically, I think is an incredibly irreverent look at how we show up in the world as New Thought in the moment. And always a great laugh, but also always a deeper, I walk away with a deeper understanding of the philosophy following that program. So again, a huge variety, and I didn't even get into what we do on Sundays, so we'll save that for another conversation.
Yeah. Wow. So there's really a lot of content. There's a lot of diversity within that content, although it speaks to people like us, people that are interested in self-development, bringing communities together to talk metaphysics and New Thought. So, yeah. So
Yeah.
at 4.5 years you've been doing this.
Uh-huh.
How has it changed for you personally? Because like you mentioned, some people start a show and after a few months drop off. And so I'm just underscoring how amazing it is that you've stayed enthusiastic, that you've kept this going, that, I'm sure there's peaks and valleys in all of that. But how is it, has your vision changed since the beginning? Are you still feeling like it's going in a particular direction, or is it made a U-turn or switched courses? How is it now compared to, for you, as it was at the beginning?
Yep. Great question. Fabulous question. Thank you. New Thought Media Network started as a reaction. There's no other way to say it. I was reacting to the experiences of the world. So if we backpedal 4.5 years, that puts us in March of 2020. And we don't need to go down the road of all that was going on. But what I know is that there was a vision within me. I had no clue how to really express it. And as every other avenue of income in my life and began to dry up, it was a reaction. And what we did is we started with prayer. Not even we, I, I started with prayer and turned on our broadcast platform here and began our morning prayers, 8:15 a.m. and 8:15 p.m. And I remember my wife saying, "Why 8:15?" I'm like, "Because that way I don't have to get up till 8." And it's unique. Everybody else is going to be at 8 o'clock. Why not be a little different? And so we picked 8:15, and that meant that I could sleep in an extra 15 minutes in the morning. And it really just stuck. But at first, it was survival. It was the not knowingness of what's going on, the deep, the broad and expansive questions that I saw everywhere. And the only way we really had to communicate with each other and with other people was through the internet. We had gratefully, we had the internet to be able to connect with folks. And so we started with prayer, and that started the connection. Now, after a few months, I also realized it was really unsustainable for me to do this alone. And I enlisted a couple of really, really great friends to support the prayer broadcasts. Concurrently, at the same time, because I had so much time on my hands, and it was easy to start creating things, and I had just finished a 30-day vision quest, where for 30 days I sat with the visioning process, and just me and just the basic 5 questions of the life visioning process. And part of what it had emerged and part of what was always there are actually things that we're now doing today. Now, in 2020, I really didn't foresee that we would be spending weeks at a time producing live streams and video recordings of various conferences and various retreats and various New Thought organizations. I didn't foresee that we would be doing some of the things that we're doing that I'm not ready to announce yet. So, but there's some things happening in the background that I didn't foresee. But if I go back to those visioning notes, I can see the seeds were there. I just didn't recognize them then, or I didn't want to believe them at that time in some ways. So one show leads to another, one foot in front of the other. And I had the idea for a number of different programs in my mind. For years, I've been saying, I want there to be the good news. Like at 6 o'clock when we do the news, when it's over, there would be a half hour of somebody coming on and saying, "Okay, and now it's time for the good news." And we could do some good news in the world. And in the early days of New Thought Media Network, that was an audio only. I launched that and as an audio only podcast. That transitioned into a video podcast a couple years back now. And that program airs here on the networks 5 o'clock on Friday evenings. And what used to be my program, now I have 3 different co-hosts, 3 different folks that are willing to come on and sub for me once in a while. So it's becoming less my show and less our show. And our producer today, thank you, Reverend Michael Mangus. He's our producer today, but he's also one of these hosts on the Good News. And we have a basic format, but myself, Reverend Michael, Reverend Barbara Jean, who's got a couple of programs here on the network as well, one on Wednesdays with some cohorts and one on Fridays by herself. Check out the Joy Show on Fridays, folks. Reverend Barbara Jean's one of our hosts. My beloved Lara, my wife, has stepped in and really enjoys doing the program as well. So now we have a team of people that is taking over that program. And that, I believe, points to the most important part of all of this. We are building an organization based on the concepts, whether everybody knows it or not, of transformative leadership. That we each, and I get to model that I get to support the people in my I don't want to say this organization in what they need to transform their lives, to take that next step, to actually say, yes, I'll sit in front of a camera for an hour every week, or yes, I'll do this that I've never done before. And through that, I see everyone growing. And I see everyone expanding their voice, their ministry, their reach in the world. So in a lot of ways, we're modeling the concept of moving from me to we. It's not my network. It's not my ministry. It's our ministry. And it's not just me doing the work for me so that I have more money, or so that I have a greater relationship, or so that my job feels easier, because sometimes it doesn't. But it's that sense of we are in this together. And truthfully, when I do hit those dark nights, when I do lie awake going, how are we going to get this to happen? Or where's the money coming from? How am I going to get where we've contracted to be, or whatever it is? It's that reminder that we are in this. And we had a great experience of that recently, where I was kind of getting behind woefully on a project, and was able to reach out to a couple people on the team and say, I need help desperately. And they jumped in, and the project was completed earlier than I would have been, earlier than I would have been able to do it. And our client is much happier because we were able to deliver sooner than promised on that. Or sooner than I thought we would, the most recent promise. So again, it's a journey of leadership and transformative leadership, and it transforms me, but more importantly, it's transforming the we that is New Thought, that it starts with this organization, but moves out into those other greater organizations as well.
Beautiful. Well, we're going to take a short break and then come back and deepen into this conversation.
Yeah. Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth, to live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge, on the growing edge.
And now, here's Ali.
We're back with Robert Brzezinski. And Robert, you were sharing a lot about New Thought Media Network and the various shows and guests. And I hear within your talking, your sharing all about this, that visioning really is key or core or fundamental. And you do a visioning each week, as a show, and offer this for people. And I imagine that constant practice of visioning keeps you really on the edge of your own evolution, on that green growing edge. And I just wanted to highlight that we can really use the visioning process to remain fresh and vibrant, and keeping our eyes open and our heart open to receive information, to tap into new possibilities that allow us to step into new chapters.
Yeah.
And so with that said, this visioning that you do all the time, what is it that you're stepping into? And I know there's some things that that are kind of secret, or in the seed stage or the early seedling stage. But what are some of the things that you're really feeling or building consciousness around, as far as your ministry and New Thought Media Network, and some of the things that have maybe happened for you in being a part of this growing ministry that you've sort of planted the seed initially as? Because I know that you're not just here doing shows on New Thought Media Network platform, YouTube, and various other social platforms, but you're actually working around the world doing retreats and filming, I guess. Is that how you'd say it? So you're filming and you're supporting other bigger movements, maybe organizations. And so tell me a little bit about how your vision is, where it's going, what you're seeing out there in the field as you're in New Thought, but plus you're, a citizen of the planet. So what's going on out there? What visions are emerging? And share some of the good news about all that.
Absolutely. Thank you. A citizen of the world. I need to embrace that a little bit more, I think. So thank you. To really understand that, I want to go back just a little bit. Actually, maybe more than a little bit, almost 20 years ago now, because when I was first introduced to New Thought, it was through the Center then it was called the Church of Religious Science in Salt Lake City, Utah, and became eventually we changed our name to Centers for Spiritual Living and all that. And in that time, I was also introduced to visioning. So visioning has been instrumental to me from my very introduction to this philosophy and these teachings. Now, because of that, I've also found it to be, my primary way to talk to God. And in the old days, we were taught, you can talk to God. Yes, we can talk to the divine, whatever name we want to use for it. If that word isn't your word, that's okay. The universal intelligence or whatever. And I realized, rather than be in prayer and just please, please, please bless me, or be in meditation and just sit and listen, and a conversation would accelerate the process. And that's really what visioning is. It's an acceleration of the process of coming to a conversation with the divine and being able to see what's emerging and where the trends are going and what it is that the divine already has in store for us. We just haven't come to understand that yet. So through 20 years of this, I have countless notebooks filled with reflections and the answers to the questions and all that. And over the last few years, when as New Thought Media Network was kind of reinventing itself, I stumbled into the affiliated New Thought Network. And Anton, as it's also known, has a kind of that background piece of the slogan of "We Say Yes." And I'm the kind of guy that when I first heard that, I was like, oh, we're going to put this to the test. You want to stand there and tell me you're the people that say yes? You haven't met Robert Brzezinski just yet. Let's see how this goes. And so interestingly, I now sit on the board of trustees, the board of directors with the affiliated New Thought Network, because they kept saying yes to me. And when the time came in my visioning, what came forward was to serve a greater vision for New Thought. And Anton was one of the ways to do that. Along the way, I also recently said yes to the International New Thought Alliance and was elected to their board as well. And it puts me in a really unique place to be able to see the similarities and what's happening in New Thought at a greater level than just one organization. So there's a handful of organizations right now that constitute the work, if you will, of New Thought. The traditional early adopters or early teachers of New Thought, religious science, divine science, and the unity movement are all still strong, growing, and active in the world. And from those organizations, another group kind of grew and expanded. The Agape Center for Spiritual Living, United Foundation for Better Living, Hillside Church, Crystal Cathedral or Sunshine Cathedral in Florida. A number of other organizations have grown and expanded out of that. ANTN, INTA, the Association for Global New Thought, AGNT. We really like four-letter acronyms around this movement, and then I look at myself and New Thought Media Network, and what we're doing is kind of like now the third generation. Because out of all that, I was very specific in choosing New Thought and our initials NTMN. Don't step on anybody else's, but we also now have the New Thought Men's community. And our brother Reverend Eamon Duffy, who's bringing a new show to the network here soon. All these things are coalescing into a recognition that we are all teaching the same stuff. Some of us use a little more of a Christian Bible background to do it. Some of us use a little more scientific wisdom to do it. Some have a more Southern flair. Some have a more African descent flair. Some have different trappings, if you will, different clothes on. But in many ways, we're teaching the same philosophy and the same principles and often the same practices. I have, for a few years now, been sort of operating under that idea that we want to break down the false belief in denominationalism within New Thought. And just this year, I was at a conference where I heard one of a great leader, Reverend Dr. Sheila McKeithen, in a talk share, "Let's be New Thought." And I was, oh yeah, like that's something I have seen and heard in my visionings for a number of years now. What if we all really were one? And this is why I tell you that first piece in the beginning, because in many ways it circles back to something that my very first teacher taught me, shared with me when I was first getting into this. And at that time, the Church of Religious Science and another organization, Religious Science International, were operating independent of each other. However, they both were teaching exactly the same philosophy from the same exact books, because they were two splinters of the original organization that was known as the Institute of Religious Science. So the Institute of Religious Science had a division and a disagreement and a split and operated two different organizations for quite a while. it was 2002 when that minister said to me, you know, I give it about 10 years, but at some point they've got to come back together. How do we teach oneness when we're operating separately, when we're not demonstrating that? It was about 10 years, exactly 10 years later, 2012, when Religious Science International and United Church of Religious Science came back together, dissolved their existing organizations, and became one, which is now known as Centers for Spiritual Living. My understanding is at that time, leaders from the Unity movement were invited to consider joining Centers for Spiritual Living. And my understanding, while I still have yet to have anybody admit this to me, nobody's ever like committed it to film, but my understanding is at that point, much of the Unity leadership said, you guys do what you're doing. We want to watch for a while and see what happens. Well, that was just over 12 years ago now. And what I see today is, and for the past couple of years, is a coalescing of leadership, of leaders coming together. It began in earnest, my belief is it began a couple years back at an International New Thought Alliance Congress in Chicago, where a number of leaders were brought together to present. And between the work of the International New Thought Alliance and the affiliated New Thought Network, those two organizations have continued to foster a conversation, presentations, sharing of ideas, sharing of culture through their conferences, through various avenues. And that's really what I see coming in the future, is we are coalescing back into let's be New Thought. And let's share and each of these organizations does something really, really well. They don't all do everything well, but they all have their place. And I think that if we can come together and really come and work together, there is, well, the horizons for New Thought are endless at that point. And it is happening. There is a monthly prayer call that is by invitation only, and it is predominantly the leaders of all these major organizations or a delegate. So we all know that Michael Beckwith's schedule is insanely busy, and so Agape, Michael isn't able to be with us, but he sends one of his top people every month to be a part of this prayer call. I'm blessed to sit with these people on a monthly basis and pray together. And I've also heard others publicly share, okay, so we're doing that. We could probably have more than just 15 minutes a month. We could probably get together and give an hour towards a conversation. And so what I can sneak peek for people without too many details is keep your eyes open over the next couple of years for a more expansive leadership symposium with an expanded circle of leaders and those that are being identified as future leaders within the New Thought movement, to continue to explore this concept of how do we be New Thought together rather than be a whole bunch of organizations that just get together once in a while.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I've been keeping my eyes and ears open over the last 20-something years as I've had friends and connections within Unity and CSL and Anton, obviously. That's where I'm affiliated, or the Satya Center is affiliated with Anton. And I can really feel a shift or a change that's occurring. I'm not currently serving on any board of directors, and that's very intentional. But I do keep my finger on the pulse. I do keep my ears and eyes open, and I'm noticing that there's a lot of energy. Unity is now housing some of the science of mind or religious science-based things, like what is it that's just moved into Unity?
The
Archives.
The archives, the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation moved their headquarters and all of their content from Colorado to Unity Village. And I don't believe it's a secret that the Addington Archives, which is my understanding, the primary archives of the Divine Science movement, are moving to Unity Village as well. It's actually, from my understanding, a done deal, and we're just waiting for the weather to be right. You don't want to take all these archival materials from Mesa, Arizona. You don't want to take them out of the building in the middle of the summer and put them in a moving van and drive them halfway across the country. But that is happening as well. And we see it. The astute eye also can see that Unity itself is moving through their own clarity around who they are, of their definition of their beingness as organizations. And I always have to remember that there are really two primary organizations within the Unity movement at this time: Unity Worldwide Ministries and the Unity. I might be mixing the names up, and Unity Ministers organization. So one maintains Unity Village and the publishing arm and all the worldly kind of business stuff of Unity. And the ministers group deals more in the one-on-one, the interpersonal support for communities, and those types of things, ministerial education. So those organizations have their unique identity. So I see a lot of organizations that are coming through their own experience of better defining their identity, and that's necessary again for us to work together. If we all are playing in our field of genius, in our zone of excellence, then we don't all have to do it all for it to happen. And I think we're seeing that in the education realm right now. Centers for Spiritual Living recently announced that they're closing the Holmes Institute, which is the master's degree program associated with that organization. My master's degree was awarded by Holmes Institute. I believe you attended some of Holmes Institute at some point or graduated. Forgive me for not remembering that. But ultimately, I think we're going to see that in education, a coalescing and an agreement that we can study everybody. And it was Dr. Tim Stewart, Divine Science Minister, current president of the International New Thought Alliance, where I first heard this. He said, if you study one branch of New Thought, it's enough. You think it's all there is. It's great. It's amazing. And you don't feel you need to go anywhere else. But as soon as you're introduced to a different branch of New Thought, as soon as you're introduced to another of these organizations within the family tree, you realize there's so much more. And then you come to that greater realization of our oneness. So there's really no reason for us to be, no divine reason, at least, no ultimate universal reason for us to be acting independently when we can share resources. And together, I say it all the time, a rising tide lifts all boats. And the tide is rising for New Thought as a world religion.
So envisioning this coming together as oneness, and now we're at the table, not literally, but many of the organizations are at a table discussing the future of New Thought and what that is. And what do you see as someone that's practicing visioning a lot, that's very involved in different arms or branches of New Thought? What do you see it actually becoming, let's say 10 years from now? Because you're talking about organizations coming together, you're talking about churches, spiritual centers. You're talking about individuals that are maybe authors or teachers that all consider themselves as somehow connected to this New Thought movement. What will it look like, or what do you perceive it might look like 10 years from now? Because in my little world, church for me at Satyas is no longer a brick and mortar. We're doing things online. We're using New Thought Media Network as one of our platforms. And so how do you see all of these different organizations, spiritual centers, individuals coming together and now as one, deepening into oneness? How can we think of ourselves as this big global cosmic community?
That's a great question, and truthfully one that I haven't given an awful lot of deep. I haven't gone too far out. A lot of everything's been consumed by the network in the last handful of years. However, as soon as you asked the question, in the back of my mind, what I heard was, we're the new Christianity for the coming millennia. Now, that's a loaded statement, and I don't know that I've ever said it before, but I don't want to equate the fact that we are becoming more Christian or that we are promoting a Christian message. I actually think we're growing beyond what almost everybody on the planet defines as Christianity. I think we're growing beyond that. 10 years, 50 years, 100 years, I do see us, the New Thought philosophy, with as much power, influence, and for good as the good that we can see in the Christian church, in the Jewish traditions, right, and in all of the Abrahamic religions and others. I see this coalescing where people are beginning. One of the things I like to talk about is in transformative leadership, we work on ourselves first. That gives us the baseline and the strength and the stability and the courage and the health and everything to work in the organizations that we serve or the organizations that we feel called to. And when those organizations are all starting to work similarly, that's how we actually change the world. So it's been said that the work of cultural change is a long and messy business. I want to let go of the messiness. But what I feel we're doing is we are changing the culture to a culture that recognizes our oneness. And so 10 years down the road, you're going to see a lot more leaders that are utilizing the practices and the principles that we teach rather than the traditional principles of leadership that we have today. We will, in corporations, we will see visionary leaders that are more focused on the we than the me. This is one of my personal pet peeves right now, is we have a tendency to define visionary leaders as people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. And yes, they had to have a vision to accomplish what they have, but their vision has been, generally speaking, how do I get me? Because I personally believe that being a billionaire is a moral failure. I just heard a song at a conference recently that somebody used, and they used it and the song is, I want to be a effing billionaire. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, no, that is a moral failure. How much do I personally need to survive? And how much more good would that money do out in the world helping others rather than just accruing interest in somebody's bank account who's never going to spend it and eventually leave it to his kids who will never actually spend it or invest it in humanity? So this is, again, part of that shift we're shifting from the me to the we. And as more people find new thought, more people will awaken to that sense of, okay, so 500,000, that's good enough. $1 million a year, that's good enough. And start to take the excess, or what they create, what they build, and invest that into humanity, into humanity's evolution. Right? Remember, part of our statement in the beginning, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment. We are all already enlightened when we awaken to that, when we say yes to that. We can close our eyes and go back to sleep, but we implore you not to. In that enlightenment, I want to inspire others. I want to inspire through myself that this sense of we-ness. We are in it together. The new thought philosophy can guide us and direct us, and it can awaken the planet. And to borrow the words of Sharif Abdullah, that's part of how we create a world that works for all.
Beautiful. So what would you say, and we're coming to the end of our time together, so maybe we'll finish with this. What would you say to those that hear about new thought in this, maybe 10-year or 5-year or a year from now, greater vision as we come together and we're now more we than individuals. And there's someone that hears about it, likes, what's being presented as a faith, a philosophy, and a way of life, but says, I'm not into religion, and this somehow still feels religious, because I know that's kind of how I feel. Like when you said, oh, it's the new Christianity, on one ear was like, oh, that's interesting. The other was like, oh, the new Christianity, that sounds religious. And so what would you say to a younger person that maybe has never been aligned with any religion, but really can benefit from the learning about how the mind works, how to create a better reality for themselves, wants to be connected with community, but then kind of like, oh, not religion though. I don't know that I want to get involved in a religion. How would this sort of new thought movement attract or speak to that person that likes what the message is, wants to take responsibility for their own creation, their own life, but doesn't like the religious component?
Yes. It takes a conversation. I wish we could just turn on a light switch. But to me, what I often share is that we are spiritual beings by our very nature. And we each would define spirituality differently. And that's good. And so I believe the only thing in our lives we should be religious about is our own spirituality.
Beautiful.
There's no religion of a person that just leads to division. There's really no religion of an ideology or a belief system. But if you are religious about your own spirituality, your own daily practice, living the principles as you see them, living the philosophy that you believe, again, I believe that's also part of how we create a world that works for all. So be religious about your own spirituality, not somebody else's.
Beautiful. Thank you, Robert. This has been an enlightening conversation. I appreciate you and all the work that you've done to create this beautiful network, New Thought Media Network. And thanks for producing our show week after week. And it's been over a year now. Thank you. And thank you to Michael, our producer. He's always there behind the scenes. And thank you, everyone, for watching today. I hope you found this enlightening and inspiring. And I'll be back next week with the beautiful Reverend Michelle Wadley and her new book. Goodbye. Take care. Lots of love to you right where you are. Mwah. Bye-bye.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth, to live a conscious life, to live a conscious life. on the growing edge.